welcome to this special broadcast and to the participants joining us virtually on Ring Central. I'm Zanele Morrison. Now, every year, the Railway Safety Regulator releases its Railway State of Safety Report. The purpose of this report is to dissect the safety standards in the railway sector, look at what's worked and where improvements are required over the year to come. Well, what can be done as well to ensure that safety standards are maintained? And this is critical and imperative for communities, societies, as well as for businesses and ultimately the economy. I am joined by industry leaders in the railway sector who will help us understand where certain challenges lie or what remains still to be done so we can show even significant improvement going forward. But let's meet our panelists.
The panelists are Brian Munakali, CEO, Railway Safety Regulator. Russell Baigis, CEO, Transnet Freight Rail. Tepo Khobe, CEO, Gautrain Management Agency. Moshe Mkhohi, CEO, Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager. And Hissam Emran, Group CEO, Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa.
Welcome back. Let's jump straight into the conversations with our esteemed guests. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I think to have all of you in the same room is hopefully not a rare occurrence because it is so critical for a united force, especially when it comes to the topic of safety across all the sectors. Brian, finally it's out. You must be heaving a huge sigh of relief now that you know the state of safety in the country. So what are the highlights or the key things that the report brings to everybody?
Thank you, Zanele. Morning to the viewers. Thank you for hosting us during the Transport Month. Just before I answer your question, briefly, South Africa is undergoing a rail recovery, and safety improvement is a catalyst towards progress. The Railway Safety Regulator oversees and promotes safety improvements across the country. On annual basis, we release a state of safety report in the rail industry, which is aimed at identifying, where were the achievements, what were the challenges, and what we need to focus on. And it's sort of a way of reviewing how we're managing those risks that could cause safety incidents. The highlights in terms of the last financial year, 2024-2025, on safety in the rail industry are that we've seen the incidents going down by 7% year on year, which is really great. We've also seen collisions between trains on the running line. They've also gone down by 39%. If you look at average over the past 5 years. We've also seen level crossing incidents, which is where the rail track intersects the road. We've seen those incidents going down as well by 7%. And also theft and vandalism of assets have also gone down by about 18% year on year. And also there's a number of operational related improvements that I think my colleagues are gonna mention. So those are sort of like the highlights in terms of what we see as a good trend going forward, which is about what we've been doing together with the railway industry. The efforts that have been put there, I think the last financial year is showing signs of recovery, not just operationally, but on safety. But there's still more to do, definitely.
And I think I want to come back to that because I think it's important for us to understand the mechanisms that you've had to put into place to increase safety. I mean, these are complex things that you are dealing with, and not only social elements that disturb the process, but also just how we do it, right? Our focus on safety is so critical. Russell, from a Transnet perspective, I mean, you're probably sitting with a lot more that you are reflecting on out of the report. What fruits have last year's efforts borne that are seen in the report?
Thank you, Zanele, and good morning. Firstly, congratulations to Brian. He's just been appointed as the Chief Executive of the Railway Safety Regulator. He's hit the ground running. From our point of view, Brian is correct. We're busy with this recovery plan. But what we've always said is, as we recover, we need to make sure, from a safety point of view, we minimize the incidents as well. So we increased volumes from the previous year to the year under review from 151 million tons to 160 million tons. But we also, at the same time, reduced our overall incidents by 3%. Brian spoke about the reduction in terms of the head-on collisions. We also seen a reduction in the signals past the danger. But I think it's important that we don't just measure over 1 year. These things also need to carry on into the following years. That's important because these are programs that we put in place to make sure that we reduce the number of incidents that we have on the line. From a volume point of view, firstly, last year we did not have any fatalities in Transnet Freight Rail as a result of rail incidents. But also from a volume point of view and the cost impact, so the previous year, 23-24, we lost something like 6.5 million tons because of derailments, and the year under review, we reduced that to 5 million tons. And then the total cost of incidents, we also managed to reduce from about 2.4 billion rand to 1.6 billion rand. So that's significant, but there's more work to do for us to reduce that even further.
Significant and a huge cost, right, to your customers as well. Moshe, you handling the infrastructure part, so quite related to Russell's work as well. In your view, from an infrastructure perspective, how have you gone about just what efforts have been put in, and what are your reflections on the report?
Look, I think the report from where I'm sitting is accurate. It does paint a picture of what has happened, and it also indicates areas where we should be focusing on in order to improve. We also need to mention that one of the exciting things as part of the rail reform you're mentioning was just the setup of TRIM. To say it has to be a standalone entity that focuses on the issues that are costing Russell what he has just mentioned, and also that would be derailment, loss of volumes. It could be things that could lead to loss of lives and other things. So our focus in the last year has been to help to create that platform that will help the country do better. We have then started looking at a number of areas, one being on the infrastructure side. What are those things that we need to do to bring the infrastructure to a standard where it will enable those who use it to use it safely and increase capacity? We have been systematically over years looking at key corridors where we take 10 days per annum at the least and go and do work that needs to be done. Of course, knowing that we're coming from a history where there's been underinvestment. But over the years, last year we saw ourselves spending the highest ever 7 billion rands onto these programs that are meant to do this. Hence, you see the results beginning to trickle in. But we really want to focus on zero incident occurring as a result of the network. We also are looking at human activities, because it's not only about infrastructure. There are people that are working here. As part of our responsibility now is to allow operators such as Russell and others. We have announced that there's potentially 11 coming. Those coming in will increase the levels of complexity around how you manage them, make sure that there's no tripping each other as they work, adherence to standards that Brian is imposing and which we should embrace. So we've got programs already to develop this material that will then say the new ones coming in, how to make sure that they play according to the rules, how to manage them. We training our employees to always remember that some of these things are not happening because of natural causes. It's because somebody omitted to do something, right? To keep them charged up to say they've got a responsibility so that we can take out all this collusion, derailment, whether it is on the main track or in sidings. We're doing that. Also looking at technology that assists this. As part of this rehabilitation of the network, we're putting systems that are going to really help us to avoid all this collusion that will arise. So we're putting money in there. As I'm sitting here, we're concluding the biggest shot yet on the ore line, which is concluding tomorrow. It's been successful, and that would have been the 5th one this year. So we're creating that platform of moving forward. So we're looking forward. And lastly, as we rehabilitate this infrastructure, we're keeping an eye on environmental issues because it is changing. And you would have weather that will then throw whatever at us. So as we rehabilitate now, we have to design with the new reality of the climate that has changed, how do you deal with those things? Having to engage municipalities, there's a lot of encroachment, people building houses when they're not supposed to. And all of those lead to theft that Brian was mentioning, because when they are along the railway reserve, some other activities do happen. So we're engaging those who plan the human settlement to say, can we move people away from here? Because there was a reason why we had these things. And as we're doing this, we're seeing good results now of having less level crossing incident. But we still see troubling signs of people trying to attempt suicide, right? Onto the railway line, because now they can get into there. It's not fenced, not because we did not do it. We did, somebody removed the fence. We set up a settlement. Now I want my yard fence. I take this one. So we're working on that, and we hope we are going to continue on that trajectory of getting everyone.
And we're reflecting backwards now. So part of our reflection backwards, we also laying the seeds for the work that needs to be maintained going forward. But Hisham, you probably have the closest role to human life and counting really the impact that safety has, and how important it is to focus. So when you reflect back on the year and you look at the report, you know, what can you pull up and say we've done well, we need to still do better? These are human lives.
Good morning, Zanele, and good morning to the viewers and my fellow panelists. PRASA certainly welcomes this opportunity to talk about the state of safety in the railways. And as you correctly point out, safety is our number one priority. As you are well aware, PRASA is busy with the recovery and rebuild and modernization of the passenger rail network. We have recovered 35 out of the 40 corridors. You see an increase not only in the passenger numbers, which is critical for PRASA. You've seen a doubling in the last year. And this is a focus on 24-25. But with that increase in passenger numbers, has also been an increase in the number of trains that we run on the 35 corridors. In 24-25, we ran in excess of 200,000 train trips. And what is critical for PRASA in terms of our bold, our ambitious targets of growing passenger railways is to ensure that the safe movement of our passengers, the security of our railway assets is paramount to achieving this bold vision. And what we have seen, as Brian has mentioned in his opening remarks, you've seen a reduction in the occurrences, both I think within the rail sector, but specifically if one looks at passenger rail. And as you said, we're talking about human lives here. So we don't want to narrow it down to statistics. I mean, it's one life is one life too many that we are dealing with. It's a tragedy in its own right. But we have seen year on year, and looking at last year, significant reduction in terms of safety occurrences on our network. Fortunately, no fatalities within the passenger rail environment. Where there are fatalities is what we refer to as public fatalities, is where you would find trespassing into the railway reserves, illegal crossing of the railway tracks and so forth, that you would have found some fatalities, which is regrettable and a tragedy. But in terms of passengers using the railway system, no fatalities from that aspect. What is key for us, Zanele, as at PRASA, is that we put safety first. In terms of the decisions that we make, the programs that we are rolling out, to ensure that the service that we provide is not only reliable and affordable, but it is safe to the passengers. And that is central for us to reaching the targets that we have set in the coming years.
And interestingly, your challenge continues to increase because you're saying the numbers are increasing year on year, which is necessarily it's good economic activity, seeing more people moving, obviously to places of work or whatever they're doing. But the strain is on to maintain those safety standards over time. And I think when we look at the area you work within, and we're going to focus now on the Gautrain space, we can't even imagine the kind of incidences that you are avoiding through education, through enablement. So Tepo, from a Gautrain perspective, How have you fared? What do you believe you are proud of in terms of your team's effort, and what else still needs to be done?
So thank you, Zonel, and thank you for hosting us. So in the last year, and we're focusing on the year before, and the biggest challenge that was probably trying to creep up on us in a very strange manner was actually suicides on the railway line. A lot of them we were able to avoid them, where you would be able to see, like a driver would be able to see somebody, because for us it's an awkward thing to find somebody in the rail reserve that's just walking around, and then we would actually be able to get security to that point and then have the person removed. But we had two of those that were just quite peculiar and very strange in their sense. And you then what it forced us to do, it forced us to rethink a lot of our security measures. And we've put it up at a level where, so beyond where we were before, our security measures, we've now upgraded quite heavily and even have gone heavily into technology and affording the network a whole lot of areas where we could put up trespassing beams and all sorts of other things that are required for us to be able to stop people from accessing the railway line. The challenge with what they call it with suicide is the part that we always forget. So we don't think that much about. It is beyond the person that now has, fatally been wounded or has, what do they call it, has passed away. There's the long-term repercussions to our staff, to the first responders, to what do they call it, to everybody else who gets involved with that incident, the police, and the disruption is long because the current setup where the coroner has to come through, remove the body and all of that, Hisham can tell you it takes a very long time. So these are some of the things that we are trying to actually work with everybody to be able to clear in general. Beyond that, we actually have generally minor incidents. So a lot of people are on their phones and as they're going through the stairs, going through escalators, and they are minor incident in the sense that, the kind of injuries you get are not that serious. But what ends up happening is that there's the litigation portion where people try and, try and put up a case that, we did not put up enough safety to be able to ensure that this was not okay and all sorts of other things. I mean, you'll always get one strange person that's trying to do funny things. And that drags us into, financial costs that we do not want to get into overall. In general, we've fared very well. The area of passenger numbers has been out in the media quite a lot, and we've just reviewed last quarter's report. Our passenger numbers on the rail have gone up by 12%, and that is just in one quarter. So we generally are doing very well, and it also signals the waking up of an economy. Our economy is getting to a point where now we are starting to see big action, and that is bringing people back into the offices, and that will continue as a good trend for us.
So a very interesting point from our last two panelists around numbers increasing, but at the same time, you now have the challenge of ensuring that you really put a spotlight on continuing to not only achieve the numbers previously, but to make sure that year on year. Why is it so important? What for you are your guiding platform to say, this is important for the economy, this is important for the industry? What is it that is just so, for you, top of mind and just critical for your colleagues in the space?
Thank you, Zanele. I think for me and for us as a railway safety regulator, we do recognize that safety is an enabler for reliability and efficiency. So it's a key enabler for that because when you have safety incidents, you have stoppages of the line. But most importantly is to protect the lives of the people. As the colleagues have said now, there's going to be a significant increase in the activity in terms of passengers using the trains based on the increase in activity, more freight being moved, and that is going to introduce more risks. So that is what we as the railway safety regulator, we are going to be focusing on to say, how do we make sure that we control those risks? And we're going to be doing that by working in partnership with the operators, not just the operators that you see here. On our database, we've got another 200 more operators like the mines, the rolling site and so on, that are actually part of this community. So we need to work together to ensure that we have a safe recovery in rail. And from our side, we have a lever which has been given to us by the new Railway Safety Act that was proclaimed on the 1st of August, which gives us a more, power to drive enforcement, to ensure that we comply to the safety standards, but most importantly, to drive more a data-driven, risk-based regulations, where we identified where the risks are in the network. We've sort of become the eyes of the industry, so that we can point to where we believe there's a need of a focus to ensure that we eliminate the risk. A typical one is the incidents that are happening, that we know you are experiencing at the stations between the platform and the train. We understand those. There's been a significant improvement, though we had a 40% reduction year on year. However, we know that we want to eliminate that, and we're working very closely with PRASA to redesign all of that. Same thing as the derailments that have been mentioned on the freight. So we're going to be partnering to come up with improvement initiatives, both technical, engineering, and also look at how to improve culture. So that's the work for us going forward, because our major concern is how do we ensure that there's a safe recovery in the journey of running more trains or having more people that are using the trains.
Mm-hmm. And Russell, Brian speaks to efficiency. We know the challenges we face in the country when it comes to the transportations of goods and services, especially goods, from a manufacturing. Do you see an opportunity here for Transnet to even, that as it continues to focus on safety, that efficiency improves and that businesses ultimately improve? Is there an opportunity?
Definitely. I think firstly, like Brian said, from a stoppage point of view, your first priority, of course, is you don't want to have any injuries and you want to protect communities. So just to add on to what he said in terms of identifying hotspots, so we look at specific areas where the rail intersects with the road, and then we have with TRIM and with RSR and with local traffic departments, we have level crossing awareness campaigns. We work with schools in creating awareness around the dangers that are associated with rail and crossing rail lines. And that has helped us. If I just looked at the numbers, last year we had level crossing incidents and we lost 17 lives. This year, fortunately, with the work that we've done together with the TRIM and the Department of Transport and RSR, we've had no fatalities for the first 6 months of this year. So which means the efforts are working. But it's not just about efficiency, it's also about making sure, like I said, to keep people safe. But you want to also reduce the stoppages, like Tsepo explained. It takes a long time to recover, the police has to come out and so on. But in terms of further efficiency, I think also technology, as we start introducing technology into the conversation, making sure that there are alarms when you come to level crossings, how do you keep each other safe? We're looking at some new technologies from a rail point of view, onboard computers for some of our older locomotives that tells you about speeds locals were traveling at and making sure that you keep within the operation parameters and to reduce the risk of incidents. So those are the sorts of things that we need to introduce from an efficiency point of view. The world has moved on in terms of technology, and we need to catch up in terms of that. To improve not only from a safety point of view, but also from an efficiency point of view and from a volume point of view. So that's what we focused at.
So it's quite interesting that efficiency is linked, yes, to the infrastructure piece, but then there's also the social piece. And then there's the technology piece that comes into play. And from the outside, we can't see those small things, but you see the minor things that are not visible to the human eye, but it increases safety. So Moshe, I mean, one or two examples on initiatives that have led to this direct drop in fatalities that Russell referred to.
Look, Zanele, what we have realized we needed to do was to first deal with the ecosystem that we are operating in, and key in that were the stakeholders who are the communities, where we had to work hard with them to reach out, train them about what to do around the railway network. Also, there's criminal element that creeps in that does cause this problem. Work with the community to isolate this and put human face to it. That is not just a train driver, it is Moshe Motlohi. so that people can now know he's not a train driver. He's a human being after all. That, hard as it is, has been a point where we had to work hard at getting through. We work with traditional leaderships, councillors, everyone that can reach out to people. We've got future initiatives that we want to roll out. For example, along our railway line, we've got fiber that has got access to, that can enable people to access free Wi-Fi. So we've got an initiative where we say communities adjacent to our lines should access this free Wi-Fi so that they can relate better with railway. It's not only a nuisance. And also when we do projects, we try as much as we do when we've got these shuts, reach out to local communities, give them work where it is possible. Then this does heighten the awareness around what needs to be done in this space when you're dealing with this. Of course, Russell has mentioned this thing, we're looking at bringing technology. And there's change management to that. Those who are working with the current system, you have to allay their fears that this is not going to kick you into the street. You have to embrace it. Let's train them so that all these systems can work together. And we also have to understand that we are assuming some level of being a regulator ourselves in a way to the other parties. So we have to know how do you deal with those areas that could be a little bit dual authority, which could cause a conflict. So we have to lean close to Brian so that we don't send mixed signal to those who are operating our system. So we really have to be Siamese twins, if you like, to make sure that the system does work. And that's what we're focusing on. And we know, there's a clip, one of our Russell's train drivers, there's a guy attempting suicide. This guy recorded something that hit all of us hard. He's saying, why do I have to be the one who kill you? Because this one says, I want to die. This guy, by grace of God, he was able to stop the train. Then he recorded this conversation, this guy wanting this. Another person leaving a child there. So those messages, when our corporate affairs team go to community, we relay them because they begin to touch at a human level that there's something that ought to be done. Yeah.
And South Africa is interesting because you've got to speak the language of the people that are your stakeholders. There's no sophisticated campaign you can run. You really have to customize messaging. And Hisham, you have people everywhere. It's not just on the rail track. You've got people around offloading of goods, unloading of goods. Human beings are everywhere. You have to keep your eye on so many factors. So how do you build systems, or how do you go about just synchronizing safety for every single person who's around your operations?
Zanele, I'll come to that, but I just want to touch on something you raised earlier. I thought it was a very important point around the economic contribution as well as efficiencies. And I think as well as in the passenger rail space, it's a critical aspect that is driving this recovery and rebuild and transformation of passenger rail. So the contribution to the economy, just very quickly on that. If one looks at, I've mentioned earlier, we've recovered 35 of the 40 corridors. A few years back, we were operating 4 of the 40 corridors. And what we saw was the household income spend on transport was significantly high. It still is today, when you don't have a fully functional and efficient passenger rail system. Household transport spend on transport was sitting at over 40% of household income. Now, we've got cities that have got well-functioning railway systems. You find that spend is between 8 and 10%. Therefore, it becomes critical for passenger rail systems operators within the space to ensure that we can operate effective and efficient systems, integrated with all modes of transport. If we look at the policy today, you will see rail is recognized as the backbone of an integrated transport network. PRASA can say today we are not fulfilling that role as things stand today. If you look at our modal share, it's sitting below 5% in terms of other modes. And that's because we're in the recovery and rebuilding phase. You have seen a remarkable turnaround now in the last 3 years. You've seen the growth within the passenger rail space. And on top of that, you see an entity now that is executing not only in providing its services, but executing its capital program to ensure the initiatives that will improve safety, improve the service offering takes effect. In the last 3 years, PRASA invested in excess of 50 billion rand. That's on infrastructure improvements as well as a rolling stock. And that's part of where the efficiencies come. Now coming back to looking at this cost to the economy, over and above the household income spend. I just recently read an article, Cape Town. In South Africa, it is the most congested city. But this article is saying Cape Town is ninth on the list in terms of cities around the world in terms of congestion. That gives you a sense, and Cape Town is a good example of where a rail predominantly was the backbone, the mode of transport, having over 50% of the modal share for transport, and we are recovering those numbers. We are going to build on that. Now, bear in mind, if you've got that congestion on your road network, it's unproductive in terms of the workforce. People are sitting hours in terms of delays sitting on the road. And that's all a cost to the economy. In addition to the affordability of our network, we find that where commuters were spending in excess of 1,500 per month, a monthly ticket on rail is now under 400 rand. So that is the contribution that we make. Where we need to bring more efficiencies in is, at the moment, we are still running a fairly limited service. So one of our key programs is to get signaling up and running. And that will allow PRASA to operate trains at high frequency. In the peak period, you can see a train running every 5 minutes. Whereas on most of our corridors today, trains are running in excess of 30-minute frequencies on the peak. And that goes back to the safety issues, where on those corridors where we don't have signaling, we are employing a manual train authorization program, which brings its own risk, human error, but also it brings time and length in terms of operating your trains. So those are the critical efficiencies you need to bring in. We do have corridors that we have got the signaling, Mabopane here in Gauteng, the Simonstown line in Cape Town, and there we're already running at 15 to 20-minute frequencies, and we see the trains are full in the peak. Some of the trains, from a tourist point of view, like the Simonstown line, it's full right through to Saturday. So this efficiency is critical to ensure that we contribute back in terms of the economy. What we are doing outside to ensure, over and above the signaling that I've mentioned, there are other technologies, as Russell has mentioned, to ensure the safe movement of passengers. One of the key is the rollout of our new modern trains. I mean, you must have seen the People's Train, Isitimela Sabantu, the blue and grey train that we've got running out there. And this comes with specific features to improve safety. For example, you would know in the past, you would see the photographs of passengers hanging out by the doors of the train. This train will not move if the door is not closed. So that's the first thing, the safe movement of passengers. Inside the train, we've got the CCTV, we've got the physical security on the trains. Our passengers are feeling a lot more safe. I always like using the example, and I was just recently on the train with the mayor of Johannesburg last week, and we've got scholar coaches, where we've got students as young as grade 1, grade 2 taking the train. And what we've observed, Zanele, which speaks to the safety, personal safety on our system, is that we now find our passengers feeling safe and secure to pull out their laptops and pull out their phones and work on the train. And a good couple of years back, it would have been a little bit, you'd think twice. Now the question is, we want Wi-Fi on the trains. So these are some of the interventions we're rolling out. At our stations where you access our services, we've got the CCTV cameras, we've got physical boots on the ground to assist with our commuters. And this is all aimed at ensuring we've got a safe environment when you access passenger rail. We undertake annual customer satisfaction surveys. And this is one of the questions we ask. Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? How do you rate our service? And in the last, if you look at 24-25, we are now sitting at above 70% satisfaction, whereas previously we were below 50. It's not where we want to be at Zanele, but these are some of the positive signs you see, broadly speaking, across the rail sector in terms of improvement. We are still a long way away. We've got bold, ambitious plans that we want to achieve, but it's critical now that we can invest and execute on these programs, which we have demonstrated in the last 2 to 3 years.
And now that you've achieved all of that and you are doing the recovery, maintenance is not, it's probably not as easy as the initial implementation, right? Keeping that standard and keeping it going. And that goes to the Gautrain as well. The challenge of being able to maintain that standard. What are some of the things that you've had to do to ensure that safety becomes part of the culture? Because humans change all the time, but it's also difficult to make them sustain the habits of safety in the environment.
So with us, it's a very difficult thing, Zanele, because when your customer satisfaction survey sits at between 97 and 95%, that 3 to 5% margin, if you make an error, they let you know. And they let you know immediately on X and on every social media platform, and it becomes what it looks like, a general crisis. Our statistics on what they call it on service affecting failures is 1%. The global average is about 5 to 8%. But because we've operated at such a high standard for a very long time, what ends up happening is that everything gets to be brought up to be very, very serious. And we take that seriously, because if a product is broken, you cannot market it. You cannot sell a product that is broken. And then if people believe that you are no more operating at the level of efficiency that you need to be operating at, then it becomes problematic, in the sense that you then need to then be able to look at what are the factors that are causing service affecting failures. And one of those has been, look, the infrastructure is 15 years old. And in the 15 years old, and it might look like just like the other day, and I can see Russell looking at me and says, 15 years, what are you worried about? But to us, 15 years, it's a very long time. And in essence, what it means is that we have to push up our renewals. We have to accelerate our renewals. We have to ensure that the old systems that we thought were the best in class now gets renewed. And one of those systems that, what do they call it, that has to be renewed with great agency is our signaling system. It hasn't gotten to a point where it has broken down, but it is already starting to show in some of our numbers in order they call it. So for instance, we have an issue that I can't seem to bed down. I'm not saying bed down. To me, it's getting to zero, where we don't have an incident. So we have what we call technical spares. A technical spare is when the infrastructure behaves in a manner that you don't require it to. So for instance, a driver would be facing a green signal, and at some point in time, because of what they call Roveni fault, it would then change in whatever form. Or whatever something happens in what they call within the signaling system, that then defaults to its safety setting. It's still a safe system, but we don't want those. And I'm seeing one every 2 to 3 months. And to a lot of people, one every 2 to 3 months, that sounds like, man, you're making a big fuss. I'm not making a big fuss. I am used to zero, and I want to maintain it at zero. And for us, every incident is one too many. And we want to make sure that, but that's part of the improvements as we go into whatever setting we're going into post March 2026. As the current concession ends, one of the key things to upgrade is going to be exactly that. It's the signaling system. We want to upgrade it to a higher level of ERTMS. The ability for us to be able to do more things and run trains similarly at much lower frequencies at peak and what do they call it, and over weekends. That will be a big part of the signaling system and the improvements. A key part of this whole thing is going to be the manner in which we do our security along the line. We have a lot of cameras along the line, but we want to bring much more AI and analytics, edge analytics, where the camera itself can determine what is happening and then only send back a message that says this is not a, what do they call it, a normal situation. We now need human intervention to be able to attend to it. And then also the ability for us to, our system generates in excess of 50 to 60,000 signals and what do they call it, and warnings at any one point in time. It is physically impossible for any human being to be able to assess what is important and what's not important. So the use of AI and move towards AI to be able to assess and be able to categorize any challenges that occur along the line and beyond the line is going to be a big part of where we're going. And in essence, we are exploring a greater part of that. A lot of the warning capability is already in the system. But now what we want to do is we want to reduce a lot of the human intervention that goes with that and bring on a lot of use of AI in order they call it in assessing any threats and challenges and warnings that could appear and maintain the railway line in such a way that you do it much more on a predictive basis rather than it being on the basis of you being reactive.
And I think it's probably not in the report in terms of the efforts that you've put in from an infrastructure and a technology. And I mean, congratulations, I think, on those big milestones and on the towards the journey to recovery. And those are the tangible things. Those are decisions that are financed, it's equipment, it's launched. Like that really is probably what we consider the job to be. But is the human factor not your biggest challenge, and not the human factor of necessarily an external human factor, but the people that work. So is it important for you as a huge rating that you have to follow, because their training and the maintenance of their training surely contributes highly to efficiency?
Definitely, Zanele. I think as also Tsepo mentioned as well. I mean, the culture of safety is key. I mean, you can have the best technologies, best engineering solutions that you deploy, but if you don't have the right culture, whether it's the employees that are working for the railway industry and even the public, you're not going to win the game of ensuring that there's a safe recovery. So we as an industry have to focus more on the people side and ensure that we improve the culture of safety. This will come firstly through programs of awareness, education, and also as a leadership, setting that culture right up front in terms of what culture do we accept as an industry as at large. There are other industries who've done very well, we're doing very well in terms of progressing more into a safer culture. So there's a lot as well as an industry that we can learn. I think also the platform that we have created as a leadership of the rail industry, the recent one, which is to collaborate and come up with initiatives, specifically joint initiatives that we can embark on to improve the rail industry is very, very critical. And one of them that we've identified is a culture. How do you introduce culture programs to ensure that people work safely? You want to go back home, the way you were. You want to protect, the next person. And also it goes beyond the people that work in the industry, as I've mentioned, but also the public, the culture of the public, the behavior. When you're about to cross that level, rail level crossing, do you observe? Do you make sure that you follow the signs and rules and everything else? So it's all in the culture. And the big portion of it is for us to ensure we drive that. And once again, we're doing a lot of work as a regulator on the public through education, awareness. We go to schools, we partner with the local authorities and to talk about what are the risks associated with with the rail, because we're running trains that are very dangerous. So culture is at the center of it.
So even from a regulator perspective, you're inculcating that training. Russell, for you, spotlight on culture. Do you think about it?
It's very important. It's very important. So in the organization, it's also something that we focus on a lot. If you look at, for instance, and Brian mentioned in terms of yard derailments for 24-25, the year under review, we saw an increase in the number of yard or shunt derailments. And if you look at the statistics, about 60% of that is caused by human factors. And it's something that we're beginning to understand. What are these behavior issues? What do we need to do to make sure that we reduce it? So it's going back to basics and making sure that people follow the procedures, that we have enough people to do the activities, that we have proper supervision in place, and that we have positive reinforcement. And also, if people don't do what they're supposed to do, make sure that we take corrective action. So that is some of the things that we're doing from our side. This year, the first 6 months of the current year that we're in, we've seen a 45% reduction in shunt derailments because of these actions that we've taken. If you look at running line derailments, to the point that Tsepo was making, it's the other way around. 85% of the derailments are caused by equipment and the infrastructure. So there, again, you have to bring in more technology. We've gone out to market as TFR looking for what is called super sights that takes high-speed photos of trains as they pass through, comparing rolling stock locomotives and wagons, the condition to the ideal state, and then telling you there's a problem here, stop the train and fix it before you have an incident. So that's the technology that we want to go to. But you're right in terms of the culture. Visible leadership is also important, making sure that you visit the various areas and encourage them. I visited Tabazimbi yesterday. They've had no incident for the past year, so it's good if you, like I say, have that positive reinforcement and encourage teams to do better. And it's working for us, like I say. Overall incidents in the current year, first 6 months, we've also seen 25% reduction in terms of that. So the actions that we're taking are working. And it's important for us because we don't just want to recover the volumes, we also need to make sure that we improve from a safety aspect. And that's by creating that culture, by bringing in technology and have good communication.
And it's quite a tricky exercise. You were also talking about first year, no incidences. You don't want to celebrate too soon as well. I mean, having worked in the mining sector, every time you've got like a good 6 months, you want to celebrate, but you also want to hold yourself back, because you've got a 6 more months. But positive reinforcement is critical for people to celebrate and to see when they really do well. And you mentioned, Brian, that there are other sectors that have been doing this. Mining sector, is very stringent on this. Moshe, learnings from other sectors that you look at and bring into the transport space?
Just before I get to that, Zanele, last month we had the Heritage Month, right? When I was talking to employees, instead of taking the traditional route of messaging heritage as wearing suit blanket and hat, I then said railway is our heritage, right? Because we have taken all the good things that those who came before us laid down for the railway to happen. Now, the challenge was that as part of this inculcating the culture of safety and caring, that we needed to create more of that which will be inherited by those who will come after us. So that people can then say, it's not that we inherited this thing, but we've got an opportunity to make it better. Leave your fingerprints on it as a human being works in this thing. And I think that is going to be the way I want them to see them playing this as part of the culture. Now we've looked at other institutions with us now bringing more operators in. I'm aware that the train drivers are going to be a sought after commodity, right? So when they do this thing, if we don't have a system that will profile each and every one of them, we might have a guy who's not a very good driver at Russell's place, tomorrow going to work at Hisham's place, right? So we are now getting a train crew management system so that us as an authority that manages rail network, those who come to us, we know exactly who is working there, where was that person trained, when is he due for refurbishment, what safety record does this person have, medical conditions, so that we can then socialize this. I was saying we're a mini authority with those who come in and do those spot checks and say, want to check validity certificate, medicals that were supposed to be done, and all of these things, so that when the train operating companies begin to scramble for resources, they can have a central database to go and say, yes, oh, this one is a bad apple. Then we can talk to training institutes, say, what is it that you need to introduce to make them better? Because South Africa is vast. These networks are different in terms of topography and everything else. So each requires a different set of skills. We need to put this one in as part of us learning. And we've seen this in other industries as well. That's what they do. So we really have started going hard at this. There's something that was mentioned earlier around value creation. This is now me coining it. On the network, we are also allaying the fears of those who feel that they will be displaced from economic activity by the bringing back of high number of trains. So it was important that last year we had a session where we had taxi operators and everyone else, because once they are there, we want to extend this to truck owners and say, don't feel threatened that Russell is running more trains. You've got your niche market here, because if we do that, it impacts safety on the road networks, because less trucks on main roads, better for all of us. We've seen tragedies in this country. that are as a result of railway line services that is not where it ought to be. But we're not saying they are bad, they are good in a way that complements what we do. And we're getting into those conversations, and this is something we're doing. And again, the culture will be to say all of us are tributaries into this river that has to carry the country forward. It has to be like that. I'm not going to repeat what Russell has said around us having to lead from the front. We have to live safety. Because if it is not safe, they must not do it.
And the targets are huge for you. I mean, if there's one thing that you probably don't have control over is just how big this is going to get by the year 2030. I mean, we're talking 250 million tons of freight that's coming your way in 5 years. Passengers also increasing to about 600 million. So I think the question for me is, what is the legacy that you want to say you can leave, even when you hit those numbers? The numbers are not the target, but there's a different measure, I think, that should be that you could be highlighting as your legacy. And Hisham, your thoughts?
Well, I think it speaks to the vision at PRASA, where we want to be the leader in terms of the provision of public transport services that are safe, reliable, affordable, and efficient. Those are the elements that make up a successful passenger rail system. And underpinning that, as the colleagues had mentioned earlier, is this issue of safety and the culture that we are instilling within PRASA. Bear in mind, PRASA is just under 14,000 employees, so we are a fairly big organization. And we take it seriously in terms of how we instill the culture of safety within the organization. And it starts at the top as leaders of various organizations. Certainly from my side, it sits at one of the top priorities in terms of leadership around safety. If you come to and join any of our meetings, that's where it starts, be it at a board level or executive level. It starts with a safety discussion. And then we have also got programs that are running. We've got within PRASA, it's called Asipepe, Be Safe. And it's not about campaigns or slogans. It's what you roll out as part of this process. So as the colleagues are mentioning, the training, the refresher training that's happening, dealing with the communities, education around that to ensure that you do have an effective program of safety that you are rolling out. And what is measured by is the results. We see in the 24-25 State of Safety report that safety occurrences within PRASA has reduced by 50% from the previous year. So that's a massive in terms of improvement. Obviously, there's still too many incidents that we would need to deal with. And then moving on, once you've got that foundation of a safe system, some of the key infrastructure interventions I've mentioned, signaling. If we're not going to get trains running at 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes in the peak period, your 15 to 20 minutes in the off-peak period, we will not reach those numbers of 600 million for the year. That is critical for us to achieve. It is a bold plan. It's achievable. 15 years back, we transported over 500 million passenger trips. So with the modernization that we're rolling out, the new trains that you see, the upgrading of the stations, the infrastructure that we are rolling out to meet these capacities, that can be achieved. We have certainly been encouraged by our customers returning back to passenger rail. Wherever we have relaunched the line, we have seen the excitement and gratitude for having rail back in the communities. You can see the impact it has. And Zanelli, key around not what PRASA is doing over and above ensuring we've got the rail services. We've also got significant and key developments around our stations to make our stations vibrant places of opportunities. Some of our flagship stations, if you go to Cape Town here in Park Station, I don't know if you visited it, to have a look, it's got the look and feel of airports. It's got commercial, retail. We're doing student accommodation. We've just opened last week at Bramfontein a new student accommodation close to our station, 700 beds. And from the date of opening, it's over 90% let already. Cape Town the same. So it is this whole ecosystem of the service that we can offer, but also creating opportunities for transit-orientated development around our stations, along the network, to ensure that rail does become the backbone of a transport system. Thank you.
And so true. I mean, it's only 15 years ago that it was actually the backbone of our transport system. As a student, I used the train. So I'm coming back to as an assurance, just in case you need one more number. I've got four more. I've got four more at the house. I'll bring my four, so you've got 5 more passengers going forward. We're running tight on time, but there's a quick question that you could answer for me, Chepo, and that is around the bullet train. Do we see, one of our audience members is asking, do we have the infrastructure for a bullet train? Would we bring it?
Maybe you should ask Hisham that one. But
Hisham, is it you?
We are working on it, and jointly with Hisham and the National Department, we're working on something that we will announce in the next few probably weeks or so. We are waiting the final decision by the minister and how do we move with a particular line, and we will jointly be working on it with Hisham and what do they call it, and the teams we're putting together teams to be able to enable this and to make it a reality for South Africa as a whole. It's one of those things that are important. But as we talk about that and we go back to the concept of safety, one of the biggest challenges when we looked at the concept for that particular line was the issue of how do we keep the infrastructure safe. Linear infrastructure is a big problem. All the people that are on here are clear about it. Linear infrastructure by its nature, being able to safeguard it, we're going to have to find different ways of being able to safeguard that. But the issues that Moshe and Oda and Hisham had raised were, they're talking about bringing back the pride of ownership in communities of the railway lines is an important key factor. One of the things that we had missed pre-2020 was that integrating the railways into the communities within which they operate. Now we're getting that for free from, as what Hisham has said, is that people are grateful that they can spend less on their transport and they're going to look after that railway line. But what we should not do is go back to the state we were in 2020, where we did not have a culture where we thought about our business beyond our, our employees. You have to think about the culture. The culture has to build in the communities into it.
And the community will protect your assets if it serves them. So they will police it for you. I need to ask you to I think, final reflections. It's congratulations, because the work is continuing, progress is being made, and there are bold targets ahead. But what are 1 or 2 things that you want to leave us with?
Thank you, Zanele. To the viewers and to the public, the regulator is there on your behalf to ensure that we protect the lives and there are no injuries. And we're going to work very, very hard with the partners and operators to ensure that we achieve a safe recovery. And we're going to go as far as working with the rest of the stakeholders and the communities in terms of ensuring that we have a safe recovery. I think from my side and the commitment of the regulator, together with my partners that are here, many of them that are out there, we're going to work very hard to ensure that we protect the lives. We are going to bring our skin in the game. And we're asking you as a public to also please do your part of ensuring that you observe the road signs and you work with us. And there are people who are crossing, the rail line in areas that are not legal. There are people that are not behaving the way they're supposed to behave when they cross the level crossing and so on. So we're asking you to also take ownership together with us of ensuring that we can achieve a rail recovery. We need a rail recovery in this country because that what will ensure that there's an improvement in the economic activity. We reduce unemployment and reduce poverty. And for that to happen, we need to work together as a team. We need to journey together in this exciting moment.
And whilst conversations have been about recovery, my sense is that we are coming to the end of the recovery phase and the beginning of big and bold ambitions for the future when it comes to rail and transportation in Southern Africa. From me, Zanele Morrison from CNBC Africa, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. A quick recap on my guests for today. We had Brian Monakali, the CEO for Railway Safety Regulator, Russell Baiki, the CEO of Transnet Freight Rail, Tshepo Khobe, the CEO of the Gautrain Management Agency, Moshe Motlohi, the CEO of Transnet Infrastructure Management, and Hisham Emeran, the Group CEO for Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you in the next conversation. Take care.